Welcome to everyone on Zoom. We're here tonight for our second Hybrid Valley Talk, and we are talking birds with Troy Bynum, and in honor of our very good friend, Ruth Pfeffer, who we've talked birds with many times in the past, and we'll hear more about tonight. And I'm going to ask you to advance the slide for me. Great, sorry. Thank you, that's okay. We're the Friends of the Wissahickon. I'm Ruffian Tittman, the Executive Director of FOW. I think most of you know that we were founded in 1924. All of our work is made possible by our amazing membership. And we work very closely as an official park partner with Philadelphia Parks and Recreation here in the Wissahickon Valley Park. All right. I won't read the whole slide, but we do a lot of work here. Again, all made possible by our members and friends working in the park, taking care of the 50 miles of trail, advocating for resources for our park, and really focusing on key programming, whether it's programming like this, infrastructure projects like the Valley Green Bridge that we'll be building next year, as well as organizing our volunteers to work on trail improvements and plant all those native plants and remove all those invasive plants. That's a little bit about what we do. And now, before we move on to our program, but we can go to the next slide, I'll invite anyone who hasn't already become a member to do so. And I'd also like to say thank you to the sponsor of tonight's event, next slide, to Smith & Co. Company. Prentice Smith & Company manages a fossil fuel-free, environmentally and socially responsible investments for both individuals and institutions, and helps clients align their portfolios with their values by excluding bad actors, using independent research to seek out the most responsible companies, and engaging directly with corporations to push for change. And I'm very grateful to FOW board member and Chief Operating Officer of Prentice Smith for being here tonight. And I'm going to welcome Ethan Burchard to come up and say a few words. Thank you, Ethan.
Thanks, Ruffian. So I apologize. I have my notes on my phone. I don't like staring at my phone when I'm talking to people. I'll try not to too much, but thanks for having me. This is a program I'm really excited about. I wanted to say, well, I didn't know Ruth Pfeffer, and I missed my chance to go on one of her renowned birding walks. I caught up with her catalog of articles and talks on the FOW website over the past couple of weeks, and I felt like I increased not only my knowledge, but also just my store of goodwill, just by watching Ruth and by reading her words. Ruth was a longtime friend of Friends of the Wissahickon, whose excitement and passion for birding was irresistible. She passed away in May at the age of 80. She was the owner of Birding with Ruth, and always ready to share her extensive knowledge about bird characteristics, calls, migration patterns, by giving lectures and leading bird and nature walks for FOW and for other groups. Ruth made birding accessible to as many people as she could, both with her deep knowledge of birds, with her great enthusiasm and welcoming personality, both of which, again, were really palpable in her writing and her talks. And if you haven't seen those on the FOW website, I really recommend them. They're great. Before tonight, I also hadn't met Troy Bynum, but I admit to being a little bit of a secret admirer. On more than one occasion, I go running a lot in the park, and I've seen Troy in the park passing him with his silent work, the camera. There's almost like a sacred aura, I feel like, around someone who's so focused and so still. Something really cool to see, almost like an artist hunter. Something I really admire. And I also try to never miss Troy's weekly feature on the Friends of the Wissahickon Instagram account. His photographs of birds and nature are just jaw-droppingly beautiful in their detail. And the captions also, I feel like, kind of reveal almost a kindred spirit to Ruth. So I think that's a nice combination tonight. Troy is a Mount Airy-based hobby naturalist and wildlife photographer. He grew up in Philadelphia and frequently visited Wissahickon Valley Park as a kid. And now he gets to visit and enjoy the park with his daughter. Growing up, Troy always had a fascination with nature and wildlife, found himself watching a lot of Animal Planet and documentaries on various interesting animals. And now he has a passion for showcasing natural designs, patterns, and colors that appear throughout various wildlife species. Troy enjoys exploring the local wildlife around Philadelphia and bringing attention to the natural beauty of things that we encounter on a regular basis, but often overlook. So I'll leave it for you there, Troy. I'm really looking forward to the program.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. It's like you said, my name's Troy Bynum. I'm a hobby naturalist and amateur wildlife photographer. I say amateur because I started this a few years ago in late 2019. Is this better? Can you hear me? All right, how about now? Okay, let's hide this. All right, so I grew up in Mount Airy, visited the park a lot, but when I was younger, I knew it as Valley Green, because I always came down Valley Green Park here. We used to feed the ducks and walk around. As I got older, spent more time in the park, enjoyed the woods a lot more. Never really paid attention to the wildlife as I was younger, but recently it's something that's become a big part of my life. When I was a kid, where could you find wildlife in Philly? I'd probably look at you like you were stupid and say you're in the wrong place. But now when I tell people that I'm a wildlife photographer from Philly, I get those looks of, you're smoking something, you're not a wildlife photographer in Philly. But there are a lot of wildlife and animals that you can find around Philly. And a lot of them you can find here in Wissahickon Valley Park. Sorry about that. All right, so first, before we get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about Ruth and honor Ruth. So I met her last fall during a birding walk that she led that started at Forbidden Drive in Bells Mill. It was a chilly morning, and Ruth and I, we were talking, and I was mentioning to her an idea that I had to start a nonprofit that's based around exposing children of Philadelphia to the green spaces that are around here. She was very ecstatic about the idea that I had, and she was eager to offer her support. Unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to work with Ruth before she passed. And like many other FOW members and DBOC members, we were extremely shocked to hear the news. One of the ways that I'm still trying to honor Ruth is continuing by leading those walks. So recently, I led a walk at John Hines with a fellow FOW member and trail ambassador, Lisa Myers. She has a kids nature club that she's a part of, or that she leads. So she brought her kids nature club, and I bought the equipment and the knowledge, and together we had a blast. There were several families that were there. We were walking around the park, identifying different birds, reptiles, whatever we could find. And it was a blast. We had some families that even joined us that were curious, looking around, seeing what we were doing. We had a good time. So I want to continue that work and lead more walks like that to honor Ruth's memory. So we're going to continue talking about fall migration, but first we're going to talk about some things about Wissahickon Valley Park. So I believe Ruffian already mentioned it, but the park is over 1,800 acres between Montgomery County and Philadelphia County. There's over 50 miles of trails to hike and over 25 miles of freshwater creek that flows through the Schuylkill River. So if you have not been able to hike the park in its entirety, now is a great time. So they're doing the All Trails Challenge, where you can sign up and either go as a group or by yourself and explore all of those 50 miles of trails. Oh, there's over 4,000 birds that migrate over Philly every year, and many of those migrants are going to stop at Wissahickon Valley Park. Like I said, it's 1,800 acres, it's pretty big, so if you're a bird that's flying over, when you get tired and you see that green space, you're going to stop. And there's different types of migration. So most traditional one that people know is latitudinal. That's north to south or south to north. That's what people think of when they traditionally hear migration. There's also longitudinal, which is just the opposite. It's west to east and east to west. There's also the diurnal migration, which is during the day. And that would be your hawks, raptors, accipiters. They would be migrating during the day, and they're also hunting for food as well. So you'll see your red-tailed hawks, you'll see some broad-shouldered hawks, broad-winged hawks, and maybe some red-shouldered hawks migrating through, and the ospreys as well. You'll see them flying through, and they'll be diving for fish as they're moving out of the area as well. And then there's the nocturnal migrants. So those are going to be your smaller songbirds, your warblers, and sparrows. And they're migrating at night using the stars and the moon as their guide. And they're flying during the night because they're hiding from predators. So while the raptors are flying during the day, the warblers and the smaller birds are flying during the night, and they're using that cover of darkness to hide and get to their location. There's also something called an eruptive migrant, and that's when we get a population of birds that may come from a different area, most likely because food was scarce and they'll settle down in this area. So last year in the winter, we had a number of birds that came down from the north, some pine siskins, common redpolls, and I think there were even some grosbeaks. I don't know if they were in Wissahickon Valley Park, but I know they were in the area. But those are typically more northern, but they came further south because of their interruption with their food. So they had to come a little bit further, and we were able to enjoy those migrants that would typically stay a little bit further north. So we're lucky to have Wissahickon Valley Park right here in Philly, because there's several different habitats that we have here that you can find right in the park. So within the 1,800 acres, you're going to find some dense woodlands. And in those dense woodlands, you're going to find trees of various ages, and they are able to host insects and bugs that many of the migrating birds enjoy. We also have open meadows where there's tall grasses and a lot of space for those smaller field and songbirds. They need that space so that they can look out for those Cooper's hawks or those red-shouldered hawks as they're foraging and scurrying through the ground. We also have old growth forests like Carpenter's Woods, which is great for woodland thrushes and other types of warblers that come through. That's another green area that you see as they're flying over. And that area is great for hummingbirds because there's a little meadow that's been a project that they've been working on in Carpenter's Woods. And that little meadow is great for hummingbirds and other small warblers as they're stocking up and getting ready to fly south for the winter. And Carpenter's Wood is also my go-to area for pileated woodpeckers. They are very specific in the type of trees that they like. They need those older trees. So with Carpenter's Woods being old growth forest, you'll definitely find a lot of pileates there. You'll find some here as well, but if you want to get a good side of a pileated, I would go to Carpenter's Woods. And then within Wissahickon Valley Park, you'll also find the freshwater streams. And I want to take a minute to kind of showcase the work that FOW has done. So if you walk up along the creek, you'll see a lot of these boxes that are nailed into trees, screwed into trees. And those boxes are for the wood ducks because they are cavity nesters. So with that project, there's been a huge resurgence of wood ducks. And now this is one of the few places in Philly that I know of that you can go to and get a beautifully close picture of a wood duck and not have them scurry away because they are very skittish birds. Anywhere else, if I've gotten anywhere near them, they fly away. And that's one of the things that I think Valley Green Inn is famous for, is having these wood ducks here. Along the streams, you'll also find bald eagles and osprey. So bald eagles have also made a huge comeback in recent years because of the banning of DDT. So we now see bald eagles pretty frequently now. I know 10 years ago, I did not see bald eagles. Now, my daughter, she sees them all the time, and it's nothing new to her. Yeah, I've seen them here in the Wissahickon as well. Yeah, I've gotten pictures of them here. This year, I've seen them fly over. I haven't got any pictures of them in the park, but I have seen them flying over when I've been out in the meadows. And there's also been osprey. Now, I've seen them more along Lincoln Drive, hunting around that area. But yeah, there's been osprey that hunt these waters as well. And it's very important to have the native plants and insects to support these birds. Because a lot of these little guys have a very specific diet and they look for specific critters. And a lot of these insects like to stay on specific trees. And they need those native plants and trees to host those insects so that these birds can stock up before they're flying south. And I say all that because Wissahickon Valley provides a lot of food and shelter for these birds with all those different habitats. And there's over 1,800 acres of protected land for these birds. Not only is this area important for migrating birds, it's also important to us too. So The Wissahickon Creek provides fresh drinking water for a lot of Philadelphians. So if you live in Northwest Philadelphia, you're most likely getting some of your drinking water from the creek. So it's very important to protect those waters, not just for the birds, but for us as well, because we're using that water source. And I live in Mount Airy, so when I turn on my tap, some of that water is coming straight from the Wissahickon Creek right there. All right, so we're going to talk about some of the reasons why I love Wissahickon Valley Park. So for me, it's very peaceful. It's where I come to, I'm drained. If I want to re-energize, I'll come to the park. Like Ethan said, you might see me kind of staring at a tree or at a bush or something like that, maybe through my viewfinder. You may not see what I'm looking at, but there's probably some small bird in there. I promise you I'm not crazy. But I come here a lot, and that's just how I reconnect and get back to myself. Now, the native plants that I talked about, those native plants and insects, they provide food for some of the hummingbirds that we have. Well, we only have the ruby-throated hummingbirds this side of the Mississippi. We do sometimes get some vagrants that might come through. I think there was an Allen's hummingbird that was here last year with a tundra bean goose that should not be here. That's a Siberian species. But sometimes things end up here. A storm could blow them here. They could end up on a ship while they're flying overseas and end up here. But those native plants and insects, they want to support things like these ruby-throated hummingbirds. There's woods in that meadow that I was talking about. There were, I'll say, about 6 to 8 hummingbirds that were feeding in that area. And I was probably about 6 feet away from this guy as I got this picture. And as I was taking a step back, there was what I thought was a drone that dropped in front of me, but it was a small hummingbird that was about a few inches away from my face. And I'm 6'3", and it scared me. I kind of stumbled back, like not sure what it was. But yeah, I learned that hummingbirds are very territorial, so let them have their space while they're eating. Yeah, I was in his territory, so he wanted to let me know that I need to back off. And they have huge hearts. Those birds are not scared. As you see, I'm a huge human and he doesn't care. The trees here, the native trees, they also produce fruits as well. So birds like this eastern kingbird, they typically eat a lot of insects. Sometimes they don't want to chase after insects. They're feeling lazy, so they'll pick at fruits. You can find those here in a lot of the meadows, some of the trees along the creek as well. Another one of my favorite species. I have a problem with warblers. The names don't make sense. This one is called a blue wing warbler. I see yellow and black eyeliner. I see a tiny bit of blue, but I'm not going to see that as it's flittering past me. But this is a blue wing warbler. This is one that you'll see during fall migration. This is one that I found in Carpenter's Woods. It's a surprise to me to see it, but this is one of the things that you'll find when you're exploring the woods here. A lot of times people are overlooking a lot of these things, but these beautiful birds are right here above our heads, in front of our faces. Also, this white-throated sparrow. Now, these are pretty much the indication that winter has arrived. They have a sound that I think is similar to the mockingjay call from Hunger Games. That's what I feel like their whistle sounds like. But they typically let me know that, cold weather's coming. When you start seeing these white-throated sparrows and juncos, that means that you need to break out your winter coats and get ready. There's also these ruby-crowned kinglets. So these start to come down in the fall. They typically stay in our area, and they're picking at those dormant insects. They eat strictly insects, which is interesting because they spend a lot of time here in the winter, but they're picking off those dormant insects that are still, hanging out in leaves or in twigs and stuff like that. They're picking through and they're getting those dormant insects. And like I said, I'm sorry, that's a golden crowned kinglet. There's 2 kinglets. So there's a ruby crowned and a golden crown. This is a golden crown, and of course there's a ruby crown that has a ruby-ish crown. And like I said, there's also eagles here, and I got this picture here. And yeah, just want to say go Eagles, win 6-0. So yeah, I want to thank everybody for this, and I think Ruthie is going to come back up.
We have some questions about how you get all these shots and what kind of things the birds are eating, where people should look. But I think to our friends on Zoom, I'm sure that there is a link that's been dropped in the chat for how to submit your questions. And for all of you here in the room, we're going to start with questions from the audience. And then we'll take our Zoomers if they have questions. And so in purple. Hi.
So I wanted to know, I've heard lantern flies. You know, they sort of waited for a season or two to see about they were for this. And then one reason we're seeing more is that they've actually sort of that's, I mean, have you seen any of that stuff?
Yeah, I actually have.
I'm going to repeat the question just so our friends on Zoom can hear it. And we have a question about whether the anecdotal decline in the lanternfly population here in Pennsylvania might be related to some of the birds developing an appetite for them. We can only hope.
Yeah, so I have gotten pictures of some birds eating the spotted lanternflies, specifically some of the woodpeckers, like the red-bellied woodpeckers. So my thoughts are, when we originally had the invasion of spotted lanternflies, the birds were just as shocked as we were. They didn't know what they were looking at, so they were, scared to eat it because there's bright colors, and typically bright colors mean stay away. So I think there were some brave birds that tried it out, and some other birds might have seen them trying these spotted lanternflies, and they didn't drop dead from the tree. So then they're going to try it as well. So I think it's more of a learned behavior. They're finding out that they can eat these spotted lanternflies, and they're not going to perish from eating them. So that could be contributing to the decline in spotted lanternflies that we're seeing. We can hope.
Okay, I'm hopeful. Hope that's the case. For the rest of us, we should stomp them. Don't eat them. I mean, you could if you really wanted to, but I think stomping is better. Stomp them.
As long as they're going away, you can eat
Yeah,
them.
either way, right? Big jam.
Whatever works.
Okay.
So how late is the fall migration season go, and what are some of the key birds to look for during this?
Okay, we have how late will the fall migration go, and what are the key birds we should be looking for?
So fall migration typically starts, I want to say, late July, early August. Birds don't understand fall like we do. So late July, early August, you'll start seeing some birds migrate, and it'll run till around beginning of October, I think, is when things start to trickle down. But September is a peak month for warblers. So you're going to see all types of warblers coming through, and you want to look for cold fronts. So when there's a cold night, that morning you want to get up and go looking for those warblers. And then the next month, October, is when we start to see those sparrows that are coming in. So the warblers are moving out, the sparrows are coming in. And then towards the beginning of October, we should have all of our wintering birds that are here. Except for the waterfowl, they'll be coming all the way through November, December. Waterfowl, so that's ducks, geese.
On the left here. We have a question about the best time to wake up to go birding. At night.
Well, I don't do birding at night. I will be doing an owl prowl with Springside Chestnut Academy with the second grade girls. So that'll be a chance for me to test out when's a good time to go birding at night. But typically in the morning, I get up, depends on how far I'm traveling. If I'm coming to the park, I'll wake up maybe an hour before sunrise and try to get here maybe a half hour before sunrise to 15 minutes. And then I'm walking the trails, typically trying to get to my spot by sunrise. If I'm going somewhere like Jersey or out of state, I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get to my location by sunrise.
I have a question that lights out during migration time. Are those lights that are upward pointing, or if you have a door light that's covered and shining down, is that still a problem for migrating birds? What is the guideline for lights out during migration time?
Yeah.
So we have a question from the audience about kind of best practices regarding lighting, especially during the migration time, outdoor lighting.
So I'm not an expert on the lighting. I would go to Bird Safe Philly because they run a project that the Lights Out Philly, they're running that project. They're also monitoring the window collisions and stuff like that. From my understanding, the lights that are facing downward and have covers, they're not as big of a problem, but they do still create some light pollution. Those upward facing lights are a huge problem because the birds are using stars and moonlight to guide them. So if they have other bright lights confusing them, they can get disoriented, and that's how we end up with some vagrant birds that may get lost from various light pollutions as they're going over cities.
Places in the park to see.
All right, we have a question about Troy's favorite places to find his favorite birds, if he wants to share.
I'll give you guys three.
He has a list of 12, but you're only getting his bottom three.
So my favorite place to go where I feel like I can definitely get a good number of species is Houston Meadow. That's also a good place for warblers as well. They typically like that area. Second favorite is Andorra Meadow. Again, the meadows are great for those song and field birds because it's a lot of open area. So you can typically get a lot of birds there. And then with the meadows, you can also get some of the hawks and raptors as well. And then my third favorite, I know it's a little bit cheating, but I like to go to the environmental center since they have the bird feeders there. There's a higher concentration of birds. So if I just want to go and just feel better about myself,
Quick bird fix?
then I'll go to the environmental center and I'll get some pictures of birds there.
Excellent. I think there was in the back. Yes.
Any advice, like someone that wants to get their first camera, first of like 30,000 gear, not just good approach.
We have a question in the audience about best gear to get started with birding photography and spotting birds.
So as far as gear, it's preference and budget. People like myself like Nikon. Some people prefer Canon or other cameras. But it depends on what you like. And if you haven't, I guess, picked a brand yet, I would maybe test out a few different cameras, check out the setting, the feel, how you like it. I think there's some shops in Philly that you can definitely rent cameras from and get a better feel for those cameras and see what you like. As far as binoculars, the ones that I use the most are called Knox. It's a company out in California that makes these cool, different, funky colored binoculars. And they have some pro ones that I think are 10-25, which is what birders typically use when they're going birding.
We have a question about lenses for cameras.
Lenses, again, that's personal preference and budget. You can get a less expensive lens that could maybe run you a couple $100, or you can get a super long telephoto lens that could run you a few $1,000s. Same with the camera bodies. You can get a camera body that could be a few $100s, or you can get one that's a few $1,000s. The mirrorless cameras now, their prices are pretty up there. And the DSLR, which are the older cameras, those are now what are kind of phasing out. So if now might be the time if you want to jump into it and just kind of dabble, you might want to try a DSLR camera because those will be cheaper at this point. Then if you get serious about it, maybe upgrade to mirrorless.
Can you tell me about the range you want?
Okay, we're more technical specs, the range on the lenses for telephoto.
Yep, so the range for telephoto, you want something that can reach at least, I want to say 500 to 600 millimeters. I think I have two lenses. So one is 200 to 500, and then I have a 150 to 600. And I'm typically using the 150 to 600, but I'm typically at like 400 to 600 meters the entire time. Because you want to stay far enough back where you can let the wildlife enjoy themselves, whether they're foraging, bedding or whatever they're doing. You want to give them that space so that they can continue doing things naturally. You can get pictures of them. So telephoto lenses, something 400 to 600 should be good.
Can you use 400, 600 handheld, or do you need a tripod?
All right, we're still in the technical weeds, and we're handheld versus tripod camera.
Okay.
Lens or something.
So that depends on your stamina and if you want your shoulder to be killing you. So I do have a tripod and a monopod, but I'm also very impatient, so I'm not standing still too long. So I go freehand. So I'm holding that long telephoto lens most of the time. I do have some friends that are a little bit older and they don't enjoy using or holding that long telephoto lens, so they'll use some type of support, whether a monopod or a tripod. Sometimes the monopod is a little bit easier to move around with versus a tripod, but they do definitely help.
Yeah, in the back. Phillies fan.
Depending on your budget, might also want to see. My question for you is about the tax. Well, actually, just really about the tax. Like visual ID, sound ID, birds, and then like we want to keep track of birds that use and keep like a primary list of
We have a question about apps that Troy uses for cataloging and identifying and things.
Yeah, so general natural things, let's say wildlife, plants, trees, anything. I'll typically go to iNaturalist because that has a pretty good community of different topics. So if I'm taking pictures of some flowers, I don't know what it is, I can upload it to iNaturalist, and typically somebody would know what I'm looking at. Same thing with trees. I don't really know much about trees, so if I'm looking at some funky looking tree, I can use iNaturalist. If I'm using it for specifically birds, and I might use the Merlin Bird ID app. That's great for picture ID and sound ID. So I was recently down in Florida, and there were some weird sounding birds that I was hearing, and I had no idea what it was. So I was using that Merlin Bird ID app to listen to the bird calls, and it ended up being a white-eyed vireo. So that helped me to know what I'm looking for at that point, because I could hear it, but I had no idea what it was. So that definitely helps. And then another one that I use is eBird. I mean, every birder uses eBird to check different locations and keep a list. Even though I work in tech, I don't particularly like the eBird list. I like to keep a more physical list. So my daughter and I, we both have Cornell birding journals that has a list of all the species. And we just check those off as we see different birds. And the plan is to kind of compare notes as we get older and see who has more birds.
And
More birds now.
That's me.
I think you might have done a how-to video for us on eBird to get people set up on it.
Oh yeah, during the City Nature Challenge. It was iNaturalist that was doing a tutorial for it. So I had to upload pictures to iNaturalist and identify things.
And I think we still have those videos on our website. So if any of these apps sound interesting, Troy can talk you through it, which might make it even more fun. So, right, and another question.
I just want to mention that one time I went birding with Ruth. She seemed to have the bird sound app in her brain.
Yes.
Yes. I was pretty impressed.
Yes.
Yeah, that was one thing that I admired about Ruth. I'm more of a visual birder, so once I see movement, I'm looking and trying to find out what it is. Ruth was just having a conversation, just like, oh, there's a ruby or rose-breasted grosbeak. Oh, there's this sparrow, or there's this. I wish that I had those kind of ears. I'm starting to pick up calls now, but nowhere near as good as Ruth was with her ears.
Oh, yes.
And she would also talk you through doing that call yourself, I think, which was really interesting, and break it down almost into words. So I think we had one over here in pink.
You may have mentioned this earlier. What would you say are like the top two favorite birds?
Okay, we want to know Troy's 2 favorite birds.
All right, so my spark bird, which really got me interested in birding, is the green heron. And I saw that in September of 2019, actually right out here outside of the Valley Green Inn. So I was taking pictures of the ducks that are out there, the wood ducks and mallards, and I saw this strange looking bird perched on a tree. So got a picture of it, and I was asking a bunch of people what I was looking at. Couldn't find out, but after a couple of days, I was able to find out that I could use this Merlin Bird ID. I saw down that app, and it told me that it was a green heron, and started to learn more about those, and they became my favorite bird because of how intelligent they are. They use feathers and leaves, other organic matter to fish. If you observe them, they'll drop it on the water, and when it makes that ripple or that disturbance, the fish, the frogs, or whatever will come up to check that disturbance, and the green herons will snatch them up. So that's one reason why I really like those birds. My second favorite bird, we kind of have a love-hate relationship, belted kingfisher. So the first time I saw a kingfisher was actually here as well. This is when I was further down by Lincoln Drive. I saw some blue bird perching in the tree, and I thought it was this deformed looking blue jay because it had a small body but a weird head and a large beak. So I just thought, okay, that's a strange looking blue jay. So I took a picture of it, but then I think like a week later, I tried to check out what it was and found out that it was a kingfisher. Then I got super excited and then tried to find it again. Then I quickly found out that those birds don't like cameras, and they will fly away and laugh at you lots of times. So still
You got 'em
chasing
once.
after. Yeah, I got them once, and that's because I didn't know what it was. Now that I know what they are, now that I'm trying to find them, they will not sit still for me. But I learned that if you're in a kayak, you can get closer to them because they're confused. So you got those couple seconds of it looking at you like, all right, you're moving towards me. I don't know what you are. I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
But then it flies away. Yeah.
All right, do we have any more in the room? Yes.
Are there any large migrating groups that come through that have like hundreds or thousands of individuals? Or are there any resident flocks that are very large?
So as far as large groups of migrants that come through, the overarching bird group that I could say is warblers. But I know in the fall, there's a ton of palm warblers that I see in the air that are coming through the area. Palm warblers and yellow rump warblers, AKA butterbutts, those are probably the two highest concentration of warblers that I see.
Ruth used to say, oh, the woods are dripping with yellow rose.
Oh yeah, they can come in large numbers. They like the juniper trees, and they're picking the berries. So you might see them mixed in with maybe cedar waxwings as they're stocking up to move out of the air. Yeah, gotta love those butterbutts.
Yes. Purple, yes.
So what about owls? Are they here all year round?
Oh, I'm so glad you've asked about owls. We actually have 2 owl questions also from our Zoom audience. So.
But I'm wondering like what. I think it's
So we have a question about owl species that we might find in the Wissahickon.
So I won't be too specific about locations because if I am, my birder friends would kill me. But there are owls in the park.
Generally,
confirm that,
in
yes.
the park, you may find owls.
The one that you'll most likely find is an eastern screech owl. So they're all over the place, neighborhoods, parks, everywhere. You could probably walk outside the door and there might be an eastern screech owl somewhere nearby. You just don't know because they're really small. They're cavity nesters, but there's a good population of eastern screech owls. I've seen them during the day in Pennypack Park. I've seen them during the day here as well. So yeah, they can be active during the day. Not hunting, but they may move around, stretch their wings or something like that. Another owl species that you could find in the park somewhere, barred owls. I've seen barred owls. I have pictures of barred owls from here. And great horned owls. So I was told about a secret spot where there's great horned owls. Been to that secret spot, but I have yet to experience the great horned owl. So we'll see.
You heard it.
I have heard them, yes, and they scared the crap out of me. Yeah, they're loud and they're large. So I walked right under it, and then I heard, ooh, oh, right there over my head. Yeah.
So just, I just want to follow up on that owl question, then I'll take an audience. Is someone has seen a small owl that they can't identify about the size of a football and very light gray. Would that be one of these screech owls?
That's a screech owl. Yep. So screech owls have 2 morphs. So there's a red morph and a gray morph. If you see a small gray owl, it's most likely a gray morph screech owl. And if you see a reddish small owl, it's most likely a red morph. Those are the 2 most common.
So we have another audience question here. We have a question about how old Troy was when he started birding.
Honestly, I don't know my age now, so I'll just say that I started in 2019. I'm considered a pandemic birder because I kind of started around the time that COVID hit and everything got shut down. So I got to spend more time in the woods. And as I was out there more, I started taking pictures of more things. And as winter came, everything moved out of the area or died off. And the only thing that was left was birds. And then once you start to try to, it's slippery slope, because once you start, you can't stop. And now
So that's interesting that you just said that about winter. We have a question on Zoom about what birds stay around during the winter, and it looks like.
yeah, so there are some endemic birds that will stay around during the winter. You'll see your typical blue jays, your cardinals, which are beautiful against the snow. But you'll see them. There's also the woodpeckers that are here as well, the red belly, hairy and downy woodpeckers as well. And pileated, you'll see them too. Yeah, juncos, so they come down during the winter. They're called snowbirds because typically when you see them, you know that there's snow coming. They're another indication that winter's here. And then there's also sparrows, like they're a good indication of winter as well, because there's different types of sparrows. I suck at identifying sparrows because like warblers, they all look alike. But that's what birders enjoy, the challenge of identifying.
Yeah.
You don't know your birds too well. You see some birds in your yard. For example, you've seen like a flock of 20 grackles. What's the best way to tell if those birds are going to be staying for the winter or whether they're going through?
Okay, I'm going to try to repeat the question. If you have a gaggle of birds in your yard, how do you know if they're staying or going?
That's a good question. It depends on how long that food's going to be there. There have been some birds that, so I'll say hummingbirds. I'll use them for example. Hummingbirds, they do sometimes overwinter in areas, like there have been ruby-throated hummingbirds that will stay here over the winter. And typically what they're doing is they're surviving off of either hummingbird feeders or those dormant insects that they could find. So there are some times where birds will survive or supplement a lot of their diet using some of the bird feeders. But as far as like the time of year, if it's fall or spring migration and you're seeing some strange birds that you haven't seen before, most likely they're migrating through. But if it's the typical everyday birds that you're seeing, they're most likely going to stay.
Yes.
But what is the Canadian geese population in the park?
Too high.
They never seem to leave. They have families every year and just look away.
I know. Can we expire their passports? We're talking about Canadian geese.
So yeah, there's a funny thing about Canadian geese. They do actually migrate. We just don't realize it because it's believed that the birds that are further south might migrate up here, and then the ones that are here migrate further north. And
We're
vice
just
versa.
shuffling the deck a little bit.
Yeah, so we feel like they're here all year round, but to them, they just got here, so they don't know why they're getting so much hate. Yeah.
Robins would do that.
Yeah, the American robins, yeah, they have a similar pattern as well. You'll see them, some might stay during the winter, but yeah, they have a similar pattern where they're dispersed all over the place so that their migration is kind of like wonky, where they're just moving, but then they'll all end up just a little bit further.
Yes.
So I know that like the Philly area is your favorite bird place to bird, but what would be your second favorite? That you like?
Second favorite birding place across the country. All right, so I haven't been able.
We're talking about Troy's favorite birding place outside of Philly for our friends on Zoom.
Yeah, so favorite birding place outside of Philly. So I haven't done too much traveling specifically for birding. And I also I suck at picking favorites. So it depends. If I want to get shorebirds and be around water, which I love, I'll go to Jersey. There's a few spots in Jersey that I like. Barnegat State Park, that's one that I like. And then after Barnegat, I'll shoot over to Edwin B. Forsyth, which is another good one. If I want to just go crazy and enjoy myself, Florida, because it's like a cheat code there. Just there's stuff everywhere. So Florida, if you want to get a lot of birds in like a small concentration or just see.
That's a real birder fan.
Yes, a fan of eagles.
Also scared me.
Yeah.
Go birds.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. What was your question? I kind of lost my train of thought.
I think we all did.
Okay, I guess I answered it good. Thank you.
Yeah, go Eagles. All right. So we have a few questions coming in from Zoom. One more comment that our bird friends may look different from in the fall migration versus when we might see them in the spring.
That is a good point. So during the spring, they have their breeding colors. So they're a lot more colorful, the males are, because they're trying to show off and attract mates. During the winter, when they come back from migration, they're going to look a little bit duller. That's because they don't care about mating at that point. They kind of let themselves go. At that point, they're just eating and eating so that they can fly to their next location. But then when they come back in the spring, that's their cutting season. That's when they'll burn off all of that and get their pretty colors and start working out again.
Getting ready for the beach.
Yeah, when they get their beach vibe.
Yeah. Oh, Janet.
What plants do you recommend for the garden?
Okay, we have a question about planting in our home gardens to attract warblers.
I'll just say native plants. That's the easiest answer. Various native plants are going to attract various birds because of the insects. Once you have the flowers, then will come the insects, and once you have the insects, then you'll have the birds. But if you plant native, black-eyed Susan is a good one to get. Well, those you'll get more finch birds like goldfinches. And then if you plant like cardinal flower, you'll get a lot of hummingbirds.
I think there's a lot of resources out there from Audubon and some other sites about best planting for our bird species.
Yeah.
And
Don't deadhead.
don't deadhead them. And leave them there so they have something to nibble on.
Yeah, a lot of birds do eat those seeds over the winter. So if you just leave your plants out there, they'll take care of it for you.
Are there woodland or forest plants that attract a lot of birds?
I think the woodland birds are more interested in what's in the ground. So they like that leaf cover and that nice rich earth that has
So
all
plant
those.
oak trees. Yeah.
Oak trees are the granddaddy of them all. So if you have an oak tree, you're definitely going to have all kinds of birds. But yeah, they like the forest that has that nice cover, moist ground where they can get earthworms and other types of grubs and insects and stuff. So that's what the woodland birds like.
We have a couple more questions here on Zoom. I think you talked a little bit about this. People feel like they see the robins all through the winter.
Yeah, so you're most likely going to see robins. The numbers will definitely decrease in the winter. But similar to the Canadian geese, the robins, they're just all over the place. So when they migrate, some of them stop here because this is a long enough journey for them and they can find enough food to survive the winter. There's some that are here during the summer that may leave for the winter. And it just seems as if we have resident robins all year round. But we could have some that stay all year round that are just lazy and don't want to migrate. I wouldn't. That's what happened with blue jays. I think blue jays used to migrate short distances, but now we can see them all year round in some places.
Well, they're smart. They don't want to work that hard. And they like taking other birds' hard work, right?
Work smarter, not harder.
Exactly. Do we have any more questions? Yes, we do.
I have a question about the Carolina wren. It seems to be one of the few birds that actually just is still singing. Why is the Carolina wren still singing now?
It's got a song in its heart. We have a question about the Carolina wren and why it continues to sing.
Carolina wren sings for various reasons, mainly just to annoy us. Some of it's territorial. Some of it, I don't know, just talking to your neighbor, they just like singing. Like it said,
Chatty
they're-
Cathy's.
yeah, they're very loud. It's funny because they're very small, but you hear them when they're around. But yeah, the wrens, they just like singing. They think we like their songs.
Do you like finding birds like for a challenge?
We have a question about whether Troy likes the challenge of finding the birds.
Yes. So I do enjoy the challenge because I am very competitive. So I always feel great when I can get birds that my friends can't. So last year, I drove up to Maine for a stellar sea eagle, which is an Asian species of eagle. It's vulnerable, so I don't know if I would have seen it in my life out in the wild. So yeah, I drove up to Maine to see a stellar sea eagle, and I was there for a few days, and I only spent maybe 15 minutes with it, and I had the time of my life. So yeah.
Excellent.
Did you go to see any of the puffins when you were there?
And we have a question about whether Troy saw puffins in Maine.
Yes, so I went back over the summer for the 4th of July. I took my family up there, and we did go to Eastern Egg Rock, and we did get to see some of the puffins there, which is really cool. But I want to go back again, and I want to find someone that can take me on a smaller boat and get a little bit closer. Because we took it was a cruise that was led by Audubon. When they talked about how the restoration project that they did on Eastern Egg Island, and how the colony of puffins came back, because they migrate based off of memory. So wherever they're born, they're going to come back. So after that population was wiped out, there were no more puffins coming back because they weren't being born there. So after they brought some puffins back, they had some hatchlings, and they would start coming back and forth. And then at that point, they established the colony again. So it's a great success story for Audubon.
We have a question about whether there's any particular, oh wait, no, I can't, any particular bird have a call. Oh dear, I can't see the whole thing. Let me started asking before I wrapped the text here. A call that sounds like it's in distress.
A loon. But we wouldn't really see those here. But yeah, loons, they have an eerie call that sounds like a person is drowning and calling for help. There's also foxes, which aren't birds, but foxes.
They're not?
I don't think so. Let's double check. But yeah, they make all types of weird noises in the middle of the night. Sound like someone's being murdered or something like that. As far as birds, I haven't heard. I mean, blue jays and mockingbirds, they like to trick people. I've heard blue jays that sounded like a red-tailed hawk because they wanted to scare all the birds away and steal whatever food was there. And then mockingbirds, I've chased those around for a while trying to figure out what that call was, and then come to find out it's a mockingbird laughing at me.
So you're the person in distress.
Yes, I'm the person in distress trying to find out what it is, and they're just laughing.
Yes.
I loved your green heron story. Do you have any other tales of witnessing next level bird intelligence?
Questions about bird intelligence that Troy has witnessed.
I've observed it in any other bird. I guess with the herons, the great blue herons and the egrets, well, I guess all the herons have different styles of fishing. Egrets and great blue herons, they typically use their feet to move around and make disturbances in the mud, and then they'll strike from above, and then that's how they'll catch fish. Then you have other birds like spoonbills that have very, very sensitive beaks, and they're just probing the water to try to find invertebrates and stuff like that, and that's how they're feeding. Then there's other water-wading birds like sandpipers and plovers that you'll see them digging in the sand, and I don't know how they're finding these things, but they're finding, small crabs and other things that they're eating. So it's just amazing to see the senses that we don't have, things that we can't sense, that they're able to sense them and pick them up. Even the robins, if you see them after a nice rainstorm, you'll see robins and northern flickers in your yard. Somehow they know that all those earthworms are there and they can see them and they're able to walk through the yard. You'll see them pick them out the ground, and you could walk out back and not see one.
See them, listen.
Yeah, you'll see them turn their heads and listen, and then you'll see them strike and pull out a fat, juicy worm.
I think we had another audience question. Nope, you're good. Okay. We did have someone on Zoom who is letting us know that yellow-bellied sapsuckers sound like a distressed kitten. So not a person in distress, but a cat. And I just had one late breaking question come in here. And oh, black-crowned night herons shade the water with their wings so they can see fish.
Yes, they you'll see them kind of like make an umbrella with their wings to the fish will draw in because they think that's shelter. So, oh, I have cover, let me go there, and then they'll get picked off. And then there's like snowy egrets that don't really stand still. You'll see them kind of like not so much as flying, but like jumping around and just like picking off fish. So yeah, all the herons and egrets, they all have different styles. I think tricolor herons also have that shaded style of fishing as well, where they'll put their wings out to create some shade and then they'll snatch up birds. Or I'm sorry, fish, not birds. I don't think that they eat birds.
Unless there was a bird swimming around like a fish.
I mean, I've seen a great blue heron eat a bird before, but
I love those great blue herons.
yeah, I've seen them eat rats. Like, yeah, if you go to FDR Park, I've seen
Well, they're doing the hard work.
yeah, I've seen them spear, because their beaks are very sharp. So I've seen them spear a rat with their, I have a picture of it actually. But yeah, it speared a rat with its beak, and it was, picked its head up, and it's just a rat just dangling from its mouth.
We could have a whole other Valley talk about that. Yes, over here. We have a question about how the owls eat, and is it in one big gulp or
So
something else?
owls and myself have a lot in common where we just scarf our food down without chewing it. So owls will swallow their food whole. Where I'm able to keep it down, they'll throw up the things that they can't digest. So the bones and feathers and stuff like that. That's where you find those owl pellets. And then kids may dissect them. Even adults like myself might dissect them and find out what's inside. And you might find, I think Leia and I, we found an owl pellet before. We took it home and dissected. We found a couple beaks. There were some small bones that looked like it might have been a leg of some bird or something like that. Then a ton of feathers. So it definitely ate some small bird. But yeah, it's interesting. If you ever find owl pellets, it's cool to dissect them to see what they've been eating. It looks kind of like a hairball.
I've also seen you can even order them online for fun if you want to test it out. Yeah.
Oh, she ordered them online. But yeah, I just got lucky. I just saw it like on the tar, or not on tar, it was on asphalt. So I kind of knew what it was just by looking. I knew it wasn't a mouse. So I picked it up and ran home and showed my daughter, hey, look, I got owl vomit.
Very exciting. All right. Do we have any more questions here? And I thought we have one more. Zoom is very active. Let's see. We just have a helpful information that Winco Audubon has a scholarship program to Audubon's Hog Island Camp in Maine. So that sounds like a nice place to go.
Noted. Does this camp take adults?
Maybe you can be the camp counselor.
I wouldn't watch the kids. I'm looking at birds.
All right. And we have one more over
Do you
here.
have a go-to bird guide? Hold it in your hand, a book.
We have a question about a book, one of those things with pages that you might hold in your hand that has pictures that don't move.
So as far as field guides, I do have Sibley's guide for East Coast birds. I keep that at home though, because I'm already carrying this huge lens and camera and my arms are already tired. So, you know, if I'm carrying a book, it's too much. Gotta prioritize.
Do you alternate arms so that you?
No, I don't.
Oh, you have one bicep.
Yeah. Sooner or later, yeah.
All right.
I think Ethan had a question.
Oh, we have one more over here.
Just thinking about birds in fall, I feel like I associate fall even through October maybe, but I could be wrong with seeing a lot of raptors. We have chickens in the yard too, so the red tail love to hang out over our yard. Beautiful, but not for too long. But is that right? I mean, do raptors continue to migrate later into the fall?
We have a question about raptor migration and how long that goes into the fall.
Yes, so in fall migration, you will definitely see a lot of raptors. Since they're diurnal migrants, you're going to see them during the day. And they're migrating during the day because they still need to hunt. So yeah, you'll see a lot of them, and you might even see them in what's called a kettle. See a large number of hawks together, maybe circling around. They're also using these heat pockets to gain altitude so that they're not using as much energy. So you'll see hawks and turkey vultures and black vultures. You might see them circling and going higher and higher. They found a pocket of hot air that they're using to go higher, and then they're going to glide out and use less energy to fly. But yeah, those raptors and hawks, they're migrating during the day. The fall is a great time to see them. Then yeah, if you have chickens or rabbits or something small in your yard, that's an easy meal for them. So reinforce your chicken coop.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think we still have some cheese in the back, so help yourself. And thank you, Troy, so much. I wanted to extend a little more thanks to Troy, who not only is here for this talk, but is a volunteer crew leader with FOW and works to help us bring beautiful wildlife images on our own Instagram. And his Instagram account is also a stunner. And really thankful for you sharing your interest and passion for something that you've come to as a hobby and are really becoming experts. So thank you so much for sharing that with us tonight.
Thank you.
All right, good night, Zoom.